Let's speak now to political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe. Prof, I hope you can hear me now. Thank you so much for your time. Always a pleasure to speak to you. We all know how damning the findings have been against the former minister in this digital vibes matter. But now he's coming out guns blazing in his defense, and part of what his affidavit says is that there is no cabinet resolution that points to the GCIS having to be the ones who must implement the communication strategy around the NHI, and he said instead this responsibility was given solely to him as Minister of Health. But Prof, are we wrong to assume that, an entity like the GCIS, which is, of course, government communications, should be used as a vehicle to communicate to all government entities? Should we really get a cabinet resolution on this?
Well, that's really up to government to decide how best it can communicate. But what we're dealing here with is the finding by the Special Investigating Unit against the minister. And the minister argues that those findings are flawed, and this is why he has decided to go to court. And he argues that what happened is that the SIU already had an outcome even before it came with the findings, and it ignored the evidence that would have led it to a different conclusion. So the good thing about our country is that when findings are made against a person, the person has a right to go to court. So far, the NPA, despite having had the submission by the SIU, has not decided to charge the minister. As matters stand, what you have around him is a cloud. It's not evidence of or proof of guilt. He said he's stepping down so that he can sort out this matter, and he has taken that position. And it is also true that he's also doing this within the context of the ANC succession. And he thinks he stands a better chance, and there's one thing that is standing before him to being able to be a challenger who can be taken seriously. So for as long as a cloud hangs over him on this matter, he may be doubted by many people. But one must also remember that in terms of ANC speak, this is a minister who is tried and tested. And in terms of government, he has been in government for a long time. So he fits in or satisfies many ticks in terms of the ANC's notion of who should be a leader, but accept this matter of a cloud hanging over his head.
So when I'm hearing you then, Prof, I can then say that from what you're saying is that this move that we're seeing now cannot be read in isolation to the race that we're seeing now, the leadership race. So this is potentially a move to save his political career. Yeah,
well, there are two issues. One is, of course, any person would like to be able to be vindicated to say, I am right, the SIU is wrong. Because if the SIU is right, then there's a possibility of him being convicted. So he wants to deal with that aspect. But at the same time, he's also aware that he has been approached as one of the senior members of the ANC to consider running against Cyril Ramaphosa for the president of the ANC. But he is fully aware that to do so, he needs also to have been cleared so that these issues do not come and people will not raise that now we are going to have a corrupt person running for a presidency. So he's simply saying, let me clear this so that the comrades or the delegates, when they consider me, they should not have any doubt that I'm a corrupt individual.
Now, Prof, when we, look at his name, there's various other names that have already been put out in the public domain. We're now even also seeing today some reports around the former Deputy President Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcukasamma saying that she should come back into the leadership. But she's also, according to some of the reports, saying no, she's rather leaving this for someone more experienced or other people who are younger who could then take on this baton. But there's also quite a number of names that we've seen in the public domain. Some of the leaders within the ANC say it's still too soon to talk about this succession battle and the conference in December. But one would say, given what we're seeing at play in the public domain, the leadership battle is really on, is it not?
Well, what normally happens in these things is that everything is brought to the fore. The issue of what is your background, what is your experience. Remember, the former deputy president is also one of those who left the ANC to join COPE. So members of the ANC will be reminding anyone who wants to support him that how are you sure that these are not the people who, at the slightest challenge, they will abandon the organization. So these are issues that will be put on the table by delegates and members of the ANC. But going back to Mkhize, you're talking about somebody who was doing very well. I mean, when we dealt with the issue of the coronavirus, we had the country eating out of his hand. He was seen as a formidable leader until you had digital vibes. And he was almost standing in for the president. So he was being presidential. And I think it is that performance that had made some people to say, let us support this candidate. But he must clear all other candidates who want to come in must also be able to come in, putting in on the table the level of support that they have. Zweli Mkhize has a provincial support as a former premier of KwaZulu-Natal. And KwaZulu-Natal is one of the biggest contributors in terms of votes within the ANC. So it's somebody who will present a formidable challenge even against other competitors. But secondly, having been in the top 6 of the ANC, he would come already with people saying this is a national leader even within the ANC, not only at the provincial level. So it is really about when people want to come in, they must look at all those issues that what is their position in terms of the ANC support on the ground? What is their experience in government, so that not only members of the ANC could say we can rely on this person, but at the same time there's issues of ethics. To what extent are you taking ownership to all the mistakes that happened under your watch, and to what extent are you implicated? And also, if things had gone wrong in government, what also have you been doing? Instead of people who will say, I was in government, but I was sleeping. I did not hear, I did not see. So all these issues will be matters that the delegates are going to debate.
And Prof, very briefly, as a final question, you talk about delegates and of course, matters on the ground. The branches are going to be critical because that's where the power lies. But the president, even in his, January 8th statement, admitting that more needs to be done at branch level. I wonder how much of a challenge is it going to be for the party to fix what is going on at branch level as it inches closer to December?
You are quite correct, because even when people talk about the branches, we're talking about branches that have almost disintegrated. And when you have the level of dysfunctionality within the branches, then it is so easy for the branches to be swayed, to get into factional politics, and some of them to be bought, because we are living under conditions where, as we have seen, that the people are not only driven by the politics, but they're also driven by their stomach. They are also concerned about where am I going to get the next meal. So we should not take away the role of money in politics. So it is something that when we talk about the branches, will these be branches that will be bought by those with money, with deep pockets? Or will these be branches that are properly constituted, that are driven by the aspirations and ambitions of ordinary people? Are these branches that will adhere to what the ANC calls the eye of the needle? So that is something else. But what we know is that people can be bought.
All right, Prof, thank you so much for your time. That was political analyst Professor Sipho Seepe.